on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
Good evening and welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. You're with Talk, we're on TV, we're on radio, we're online and we're on your smart speaker. Coming up, pardons for postal workers. The Prime Minister announces the government will introduce a new law to swiftly exonerate the victims of the post office scandal. Alex Salmond is in the house, batting away balmy allegations that he stole a piece of the stone of destiny. And King Charles is being urged to end centuries of tradition and stop using real fur in the Guards' bearskin hats. Why? In the studio with me tonight to give their reactions, political commentator Lucy Beresford, barrister and futurist Andrea Eborn, and assistant editor of Spikes, Ella Whelan. Welcome to all of you. Andrew, you're a lawyer.
Absolutely.
I mean, the lawyers will literally be salivating at the prospect of what could be years and years and years of litigation, because there's no reason why any of these people who've been so badly treated should sign on the dotted line and say, oh, thanks very much indeed, I'll take the 75 grand.
Yeah, it is the greatest miscarriage of justice that we've seen in the UK for a very, very long time.
Or maybe ever.
Quite right. And it's quite right that we sort of shine a spotlight on it. There are many more questions about what happened. I mean, basically, the ITV drama, the trouble is they mixed a bit of reality with a bit of fictionalisation.
Yeah.
And that's what we
very
need to
much
work
like this
out.
show, I think.
Thank you. But what they've got a lot of different people coming forward now, these sub-post office masters, and talking about their stories. And they've been on all over the media at the moment. And the tragedy, when they are used to be the cornerstone of any local community, and they've been basically vilified within that community, the damage that they've suffered is horrendous.
Yeah.
And at the moment, they're trying to work out a compensation. It would normally take years and years and years to overturn
Well, it has done, hasn't it?
But they're talking about trying to basically speed that up. And what they're saying today is maybe what we're going to do is get a few guilty people will be let off. But isn't that much better than one innocent person? Well, as a baby lawyer, we were always told that it's better that 99 guilty people are let off than one innocent person convicted.
Yes.
That's got to be right.
And it's not really good enough to just go, oh, here's my gong, can I go away now? Well, no, you can't, actually.
Well, in a particularly emotional interview, one of the postmasters and the press over the last few days, one of them said, well, I don't just want her CBE, I want her pension and her... You know, I was stripped of everything for decades. Why is it that she just gets to give back her nice little
because
bag?
so much of her remuneration was based on profits made by the post office and really good...
And bonuses as well, right?
And that's the real question, is it? What happened to the money? A lot of the sub-post office
pay that
said,
money back.
hang on, the money's gone
where did it
somewhere.
go?
They had to pay that money. Where is that money now? So we look forensically, and sunlight is the best disinfectant. What Alan Bates has said, because everybody said, let's get him a knighthood and so on and so forth. He's not going to do that until everybody else's gong has disappeared. And he works on that sort of premise. But we need to look. There are so many questions which are not yet answered.
Well, it was systematic that actually there was a court case whereby the judge, Peter Fraser, actually said to the post office, your system actually, we're going to get an IT expert to come and look at your system. And he's found lots of discrepancies. And basically the post office rubbished that and actually closed down the case. So there were actually... Over the last 10 years, there have been ways in which the post office has systematically tried to pull the wool over everyone's eyes.
And also, the guy who's currently seeking, you know, immunity from prosecution, I think Gareth Jenkins is his name. He was one of those people who actually gave evidence against the postmasters and the postmistresses, saying that they were basically stealing money because there was nothing wrong with the system.
Absolutely.
So for him to say that he now wants to give evidence and be exonerated in some way, while he was responsible to a large extent as being the witness for the prosecution who locked these people up or who made sure that they got convicted, you know, I'm not sure we should give it to him.
No, you're absolutely right, Matt. And as we say, there's so many questions that need to be answered. What I also hate, when looking from the justice point of view, is that people were forced to admit guilt when they weren't guilty. And that should never, ever, ever happen. So when people have basically said, look, well, if you do this, you won't go to prison. Plead guilty to this, basically fraudulent accounting, and we'll let you off the rest. You won't go to prison.
Incredible.
That's got to be wrong. Never, ever, ever plead guilty if you're not guilty.
No, exactly right. But it's easy to say when you're sitting in a nice, cosy television studio, when your life is...
I love this TV studio.
Isn't it great? But when your life is being literally flashed before your eyes, and they're saying to you, you could lose everything if you don't do this.
If you've been told you are the only one done.
Yeah.
I think if they had known that
Yes.
there were, you know, 900 of them, it would have been a completely different
Well, I've heard
ballgame.
people say that if it hadn't been for the time that it happened, if it had happened now, social media would have taken over. There would have been Facebook groups, there would have been Twitter spheres, there would have been, you know, Instagram accounts where people would have known that others were suffering in the same way. But back then, they didn't know.
No, absolutely. And you're right, because if this hadn't been the ITV programme, it wouldn't have got the headline news that it does now.
Yeah.
That just speaks to storytelling, though, I think. I think
absolutely.
it was the way in which it was dramatised that suddenly took all of this material that had been repeatedly, as you say, in the press, in Computer Weekly, probably quite... I'm sure it's a great magazine. I've never read it, but it might be a bit dry.
Hundreds of pieces were written in regular newspapers as well.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
And also, this is where it's quite difficult for Sir Ed Davey, I think, is because there were other people who were saying within Parliament, this is an issue. We've had Arbuthnot and McKellar who've been saying, and so how did those rumours not reach Sir Ed Davey for him to say, oh, actually, I'm in position of doing something about it?
Now, I bet a few of us have dug ourselves a hole in our lifetime, but nothing quite like this literal tunnel girl, Kaya. She's in America. The self-proclaimed engineer has gone viral on social media for building an elaborate tunnel system underneath her house. After Carla's TikTok video recapping the tunneling progress hit over 7.5 million views, she's been forced to stop by officials over fears that it could cause a sinkhole. So imagine looking at this woman's actual digging. People in the neighbourhood where she lived in Virginia in the US were saying, yeah, we started seeing all these piles of bricks and things in her garden. We wondered what she was up to. It's one of these weird stories, I think, the panel's back here, I'm going to explain it to you, where, you know, in America, some of these people get obsessed with the end of the world.
Yes.
Or, you know, the government's coming for them. And they're basically building kind of, you know, these rescue centres.
Their tinfoil hats.
The tinfoil hats are on.
Love it.
And she's built this entire network of tunnels underneath her own house.
Yeah.
I don't know what's more bizarre is the fact that she does that, or the fact that over 7 million people tune in to watch.
Well, have you ever watched anybody watching TikTok? You know, I've done it because I can't watch TikTok myself. It's a sort of...
You like watching other people?
Well, I've seen my kids doing it. It's a sort of instant ADHD nightmare because they're kind of just flipping from one thing to another and it's taking you from A to B to C to D to... And you're going, this is ridiculous. But you've got a hit if you've watched something for about 20
seconds. And it
is
is a dopamine hit, unfortunately.
It really is.
And that's why our brains are almost changing. We're going to have a whole generation of people who have no attention span whatsoever.
The attention span of a goldfish is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the fly tipping we just did there, because at the end of the day, I think everybody suffers in some way, shape or form, depending on where you live. You see, I mean, I've seen people in my neighbourhood going out in the middle of the night, taking stuff that they've piled up outside their house into a van, and you think, well, where are they taking that at midnight? And presumably they're taking it somewhere just to dump it.
Oh, it's scandalous. It's like mattresses. You can't get rid of mattresses and things like that. You've got to arrange it with the council. But all that nonsense, as you say, about the odd or even number plates.
Yeah.
How on earth people understand that? It's all this nonsense.
Especially if you are, I mean, we've all done it at some point or other. You fill the car up with all the old junk out of the shed or something. You drive off and wait in a queue to get to the place. And then they go, oh, no, sorry, you've got an even number plate. You'll have to go. And you go, well, I'm going to take the kids to school in the morning. I'm going to empty all the stuff out.
But what a horrendous sense of entitlement that people must have, that they would actually defile a beauty spot, a sort of nature.
Yes.
To think that, oh, it's OK, everyone else can enjoy the scene and now I'm going to tip my rubbish in.
Yes.
I think that's shameful.
But I think, again, it comes down to money. I mean, if you're going to be, if you're running a small business and you're one man with a van or something like that, and every time you go to try and take stuff to a dump, they charge you 40 quid. You know, that's quite a lot of money, isn't it?
No, well, waste management is meant to be efficient and it's meant to meet the needs, but so much of the sort of push for, not to make this like a green thing, but I think the sort of narrative around trying to get people to recycle means that you know, we're ignoring the fact that people still have white goods, mattresses, crap in the back room that doesn't fit into the green bottle, white bottle.
And it's important to make the distinction between legal dumping and illegal. And as you say, the legal one is where you can say if you've got these odd number plates on certain days, you go along that, and you can pay the council come away and take away your mattress and things like that because you've done that.
There are certain councils that now people are not getting their rubbish taken away for over 2 weeks.
But this is the sort of, you know, we forget that stuff like this behind the scenes of life have to happen. So the thing that really gets me going and very annoyed is, discussion about building on, people who don't want to build on the green belt always say, well, there's so many brownfield sites that we need to turn into houses.
Right.
Brownfield sites are where tips exist.
Yes.
So the sort of the behind-the-scenes secret infrastructure of cities or towns are places where people can put rubbish and do things like that.
Right.
We're getting rid of them, and everything's turning into a recycling centre, which costs 40 quid or whatever a visit, and you have to jump through all these hoops. So obviously people, what choice do people have? They either leave it in the back garden if they don't have a garden. They drive somewhere that's already got a few piles of rubbish and dump it there. I'm not saying it's right, but what are you meant to do if you can't get rid of it?
And I mean, we constantly hear from sort of the Green Brigade, oh, we must reduce packaging, we must get rid of all the rubbish that we've got. But we somehow have more rubbish. Since they've been getting rid of the packaging, somehow there's more rubbish than ever, isn't there?
Absolutely.
I mean, Christmas always comes and goes, and you end up... I mean, I just burn stuff, and people castigate me and say, you're not supposed to burn stuff. It's the best way to get rid of it. And I'm not talking about burning plastic. I'm talking about just burning paper. Go outside, there's the incinerator, chuck the paper in. Great fun for all the family. You stay warm as well.
There you go.
And it's actually the answer. If you can do it, you should.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. But the video which you keep showing is an illegal vote, which is why they sort of tried to scarp as soon as somebody turned up. So we need to make the distinction, but it needs to be better from a legal point of view. We turn around and say, make it easy for people to get rid of their rubbish.
Why can't they actually install cameras? Admittedly, you don't necessarily want loads of cameras in lots of forests, but there must be number plate recognition technology.
There are so many cameras
do away with that.
everywhere.
You'd think they could. But this is the trouble, isn't it? They've got CCTV cameras in all the wrong places. But I'm glad you mentioned cameras, because it brings me on to the next story. Have you seen this robo camera that they've got in Morrisons? Morrisons supermarket, where they say they've had terrible problems with shoplifting.
Yes.
They're now putting these robo cameras in which can film people as they're shopping. And they put it particularly in the alcohol aisle, apparently, where people just nick stuff all the time. There it is. I think it's quite a good idea, actually.
It's a great idea.
It saves, because they say it's working. They say fewer people are now actually nicking things because they see that they're on film, as opposed to wondering whether there's a camera somewhere.
Yes.
And it means you don't have to have people actually trying to stop people leaving. You don't have to have violent episodes.
Or to actually have employees in a supermarket.
Well, yeah,
but we might actually have staff.
Well, I mean, it would be nice to have employees at the tills, but you shouldn't have to, as an employee of a supermarket, wrestle somebody to the ground who's trying to run off with a bottle of Jack Daniels. You know
and you can work, even with a dummy one, you can work. So what they've worked out is...
I assume that's what you did.
Yeah, I mean, I walked out of the local supermarket with that just this afternoon.
Well, we love it.
Nobody stopped me.
It's a great deterrent. I went to Lithuania fairly recently, and the whole thing, there was one particular store, which is all cameras, no staff at all, and you pick up an item from the thing, and it basically electronically tells you got your branding.
So it's like a vending machine.
It's like a vending machine.
Giant vending
and you have cameras everywhere, and it basically will do that. That is the future of retail, and the honesty as a result of it is tremendous. And what they're saying with this retail stuff...
Well, it's all very middle class, though, Andrew. I mean, it's all very
middle class.
Go into...
Well, I went to Lithuania.
Well, you know, I love taking my shopping and I just pay for it.
Yes.
A lot of people would say that is an opportunity to just rip everything off.
Well, but they monitor
paying.
it, and there are hotels now where if you pick up your bag of peanuts, they know you've picked up your peanuts. You don't have to tick the honesty box anymore.
Right.
And all of that is going to be the future of retail. So the idea, as you know, I speak around the world as a futurist, saying what's going to happen.
Yes.
It's exactly that. You're going to get fewer and fewer actual people. It's all going to be done with cameras and robots and so on.
And you know what they're doing? So in Japan, they have robots that look like people. I mean, they don't look like people, but you can almost amorthize them. They've got things that look like eyes and things that look like bodies. And they reckon that's going to really inspire people to not shoplift, because they feel like they're being either looked at by a human being or they feel sorry for the little creature. Their heart goes out to this little creature. Well, and as a result, they're not shoplifting.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Don't we have to, not to be the sort of bleeding heart liberal here, but don't we have to kind of ask the question of why there are such high levels of shoplifting? Because I'm not convinced that it's, I'm not convinced that it's that everybody's poor and therefore they must turn to shoplifting.
It's because they can. It's because they can.
Well, but then you get into kind of misanthropic territory where you're saying, unless we're being watched by some, I have to say, quite rudimentary-looking box, a very British robot, so it doesn't really look like...
Doesn't do much.
But, you know, that we will only behave if we're being CCTV'd.
Unfortunately, I still
like
maintain that if only you could go back to having a supermarket that had tills and that had people manning those tills. One of the biggest iniquities of the whole of the kind of the last generation has been self-service tills, where, you know, unexpected item in the baggage area is the bane of everyone's life. And there are so many people, and I have watched them around me, and they just think to themselves, you know what? I'm shopping, I'm paying you money,
Yes.
and now you're telling me I've got to go through the whole thing of
And
checking
you're
it out as
absolutely
well.
right. And
so actually, I'm going to take
shopping is a
The worst
leisure
is-
activity for a lot of people, and they want to have that interaction with people.
Well, think about
And you
this
take
rise
that
in
away.
loneliness. There are
Yes.
so many elderly people wandering around supermarkets trying to stay warm. They actually just want to have a conversation with
And
people.
interestingly, that's where AI and robotics are really going to help. Because in terms of companionship, the rise, joking aside, the rise of things like AI girlfriends is tremendous. And they did some research. The University of California.
This conversation's taking a strange turn.
But
The University of California
to-
said that chatting to ChatGPT
Yeah.
was more empathetic than chatting to your GP because you can't get hold of them and they've got longer time to do it. So the rise of companionship in AI and robotics is going to be
And it's
tremendous.
also a very
I think I'd rather
particular
talk to
type of
myself.
attachment. there is a sense in which it's very positive at reinforcement.
Yes, absolutely.
But I still don't think that that's going to stop you shoplifting. What you need are more people manning the till.
What you actually need is a robot that goes shopping for you.
I would
they
get that
already
as
have
well.
it. You just call them up or you order it online and they bring it to your house.
It's true.
My husband-
Job
You could do
done.
that. You could do that,
All you need
absolutely.
now is somebody to take the rubbish away.
Yes.
You've got them as well.
Okay.
It's not as bad as you think, you know.
Well,
This is
we need an ITV drama to sort.
Oh,
We
I
do.
love it. That's the one,
Yeah.
definitely.
Recycling in 3 parts.
I
This is
thank
the
you.
brilliant independent Republican Mike Graham. Come on. We don't want to get too ridiculous here, but up next, we're going to talk about the e-scooter, the bike, the e-bike, the menace. It's now at risk of setting fire to your house. Plus, the first sneak peek at all the big stories in tomorrow's papers. Do not go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. Now, it's time for this. It's been a bit nippy out this week, so the plague of cyclists on our streets has been mercifully absent so far. They don't like the cold weather, you see, or the rain, for that matter, but there are still loads of electric bikes weaving in and out of traffic, often on the way to your house with some pizza or a Chinese takeaway. I've continually warned of the dangers of electric everything, whether it's cars, vans, buses, lorries, bikes. Not only are there not enough chargers to go around, there simply isn't enough capacity in the country for all these iPhones on wheels to be catered for. How many stories have you heard about owners of electric cars queuing up for an hour to get their car charged up at a public charging point? How many times have we seen electric vehicles spontaneously combusting and causing massive pollution with their toxic smoke and fumes? Well, now there is yet another reason to beware the advent of electric bikes, and it's a deadly one. Last August, a fire broke out in a flat in North London as a result of an electric bike bursting into flames while it was being charged. Tragically, pensioner Bobby Lee, aged 74, lost his life. He died as a result of severe burn injuries and the inhalation of toxic fumes. His family, of course, were devastated. They tried in vain to evacuate him from his ground floor bedroom, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of the deadly blaze was recorded by the coroner's office as the overcharging of a mountain bike that had been transformed by a conversion kit. The fire started when the bike's lithium-ion battery was overcharged by an unsuitable device with no battery management system. Coroner Ian Potter blamed a lack of regulation on e-bike conversions, which are becoming more and more popular as they're cheaper than doing it right, and issued a warning about the dangers of e-bike batteries and chargers. The fire service has already advised people not to store them indoors and to only charge them outside. But of course, the eco-nutters don't care, as long as they've got an electric bike that's saving the planet. Last year alone, they were responsible for nearly 200 fires, and that's just in London. Tragically, the bike had been bought by another member of Bobby's household, and the conversion kit cost as little as £100. Sadly, though, Bobby's family paid a far higher price, and that is tonight's World of Work. Now, the panel's back with me. Before we look at the front pages of the papers, guys, I just wanted to bring to your attention a rather odd story from Andrea Leadsom, who I must confess I thought was no longer an MP, but apparently she still is.
Yes.
She's apparently been claiming that basically you can have teeth before you're actually born. Now, I don't know if we've got a little video clip of this. Let's have a look.
In the opposition's proposal today, they're talking about supervised toothbrushing for 3 to 5-year-olds. Now, I don't know if they don't know this, but actually you have teeth from before you're born. So if you don't get your supervised toothbrushing until you're 3, at a minimum, your teeth are about 4.5 years old. And it's much more important to get that supervised toothbrushing.
Sorry. I mean, I don't know what to say, really. I mean, teeth before you were born.
But it's before
I mean,
conception.
listen, I've had 4 children, right? I've seen those, images of the baby in the womb.
Yes.
Yes, you can tell whether it's a boy or a girl. I've never seen teeth.
But it
I
is
must confess.
But working backwards, and she said she sort of misspoke because it's basically working on those sort of figures. She said before they're 3, it's like 4.5 years earlier. That would make the baby 18 months before it's born, which is before conception and things like that. It's Diane Abbott in terms of finger fudging.
I hate to defend Leadsom, but there is, I mean, there is there in the jawbone or something technically that there is the promise of teeth, but the idea that you would be brushing a 2-month-old's gums,
but not
is
before
slightly
conception. That's the idea of 18 months.
Do you think she was confusing it with that whole idea that when a girl is born, it has all the eggs that it will ever need? Do you think she had that kind of vision?
Well, but whether or not she was being confused, the most depressing aspect of this is that Labour has announced this sort of, we love the nanny state. We're gonna brush your kids' teeth.
Well,
for
they've
you
said, haven't they? They've not only said that, but they actually, what's the Keir Starmer? It's in the Times today.
Well,
apparently, they want to make children healthier, happier, and taller.
Yeah,
quite right.
By
5'8", 5'8" is Starmer, and
instead of pushing back and saying thank you very much, I can brush my own kids' teeth. Andrea Leadsom comes in and says, no, we want to do it earlier. So the Tory party's now saying, no, we will brush your kids' teeth even earlier.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? They're talking about teeth because, I mean, I know lots of families who can't get their kids into a dentist because there's simply no more capacity. And I also know people who have had their kids kicked out of a dental surgery.
Me.
Right, there you go.
Kicked out, and I can't get my
and you
kids
can't
into a
get back
dentist.
in, right?
Yeah.
So it's all very well saying let's keep their teeth clean, but if you can't see a dentist...
And that was her point. And to her credit, she actually clarified afterwards. She said she misspoke. It's all right to admit that you got it wrong. Her point was...
No, sorry, no, I'm not having it. You're standing in probably the most important part of the country when you're giving information to people.
Yes.
You should be getting it right. You should not be making up stories about people having teeth when they're in the womb.
She was saying you can't get to a dentist until you're 4.5, which is why it's a bit late, and this is why they're
because you can't get on the bus until you're 4.5.
There you go.
You know, I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous. I don't understand how Andrea Leadsom can actually even return to public life after this. I think, she should lock herself away and never come out ever again.
Absolutely.
Andrea Leadsom, the Tooth Fairy.
The Tooth Fairy, there you go.
Absolutely right. So we'll come back to Starmer and taller children. Let's do the story on the front page of the Telegraph. Incredible. Yet more incredible sort of revelations for the post office story. You spotted this, Lucy. Post office handed out bonuses for getting people convicted.
Isn't this the most horrendous opening statement that I've read? Opening sentence to any article in probably the last 10 years. Post office investigators were offered cash bonuses for every sub-postmaster convicted. During that. So they had an incentive to do to damage these people's lives. That is arguably the biggest tragedy of it. And is anybody from the post office receiving any sanctions for this? I don't think so. Also, it's alleged that Adam Crozier, who was chief executive of the Royal Mail, he should have been aware. Was actually made aware that the Horizon...
And what's dramatically interesting and a major omission from the ITV series is that Adam Crozier doesn't feature at all. He was indeed head of the Royal Mail. He went on to ITV.
He was then head of ITV.
And he's not mentioned.
I can't imagine why he doesn't appear in the ITV.
I wonder why, Mike.
Scenario. I can't imagine how that could have happened.
Perhaps Martin Sheen wasn't available.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll come back to him.
Michael Sheen.
Gary Thomas, who worked in the Post Office security team, basically said that bonus targets affected how he went about his work. He also said that people were branded crooks. Sub-postmasters were branded crooks in emails that were sent on official, post office business.
It's awful.
We know that there was the kind of, not just the disbelief in people, but the demonisation. There was one woman who was really emotional in one interview talking about how she had, tried to take her own life. And the post office hadn't believed her when she said, I was in hospital for this horrendous event, and sent their own doctors to come and make sure that she really had tried to do this. I mean, it's animal behaviour. It's
awful,
below human.
And this is the thing, when people say to me, well, there was a lot of incompetence and there was a lot of negligence, and it was much worse than that, because these were deliberate acts carried out by vindictive people who were running the post office and who decided to pick on innocent families and ruin their lives.
You're absolutely right.
Interestingly, in the front of the Telegraph, it also talks about the fact that I think more of this is going to come out, that the CPS had prosecuted people and had cases around this from a very early stage. There was, I mean, obviously the Telegraph asks whether or not it was Keir Starmer was in his position in the CPS at the time. That's neither here nor there. But there's, I think more is going to come to light about the fact that people in positions of power and influence knew what was going on. And, you know, hopefully that's what an inquiry will
but also
bring
within
more
the
to
legal
light.
system, if these sub-postmasters were meant to have taken all this money, where
was
had
it?
they put
where's
all
the
this
money?
money?
Yeah.
And how come so many of them systematically didn't have that money in their own bank accounts?
And when they say, and you hear this in the dramatisation, you're the only one who's ever had a problem. And it's that assumption of guilt. And another lie, it's the assumption of guilt rather than the assumption of innocence. And that is abhorrent and needs to be addressed.
It is. Talking about the assumption of guilt or innocence, Prince Andrew strolling happily through Central Park. That famous picture from, I think, 2011, sorry, in Central Park in New York, which proves that Prince Andrew was still friends with Jeffrey Epstein after he had served time for being a paedophile. Is recreated. I didn't realise Michael Sheen was playing Prince Andrew. He looks more like Rowan Atkinson.
He does.
Than Prince Andrew.
But
whoever they've got for Epstein is an absolute dead ringer.
He's very good. And Michael Sheen's very good, isn't he? He's played Tony Blair, Kenneth Williams, David Frost.
Yeah, he's got a bit woke lately, though.
He's good.
Did you see that weird thing he did about Wales?
Yes.
When he wanted to change the name of the Brecon Beacon.
Yes.
Because he's gone all kind of, you know, native in Wales. And he's kind of decided he needs to stand up for the Druids or something. I don't know. I don't know what's happened to him. But, I mean, yeah, he's a great actor. But,
yeah, great actor.
Stay away from the...
Druids.
Public announcements, I think. With this,
but he's got the hand gesture. That's what they keep saying in
We've been practising that together.
I think
we
Lucy
could have done it.
We could have done this.
I look more like Prince Andrew than Michael Sheen.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah. But, I mean, there's two shows coming out. There's this one, which I think is called what's it called? A Very Royal Scandal. Well, there's the other one, Scoop, which is based, I think, on Sam McAllister's
That's right.
And a lot of it is he only has himself to blame because this one in particular that Martin Sheen's playing on plays a lot of the Newsnight interview.
Right.
So it's...
because they're both based on the whole Newsnight experience, you know, which was so ridiculous.
A drama of his own making,
which I've still never quite got over the fact that he thought that went well.
Car crash,
because I know Sam a bit and, you know, we've spoken about it and she was like, she couldn't believe what he'd said. And they tried, when they went to Emily Maitlis, you know, would you like to see around the palace? And she was like, oh, yes, please. Sam was like, I'm getting out with the film because sooner or later somebody in here is going to realise this was a really bad idea and I'm getting the hell out before they ask me to leave it all behind.
Right.
You know, incredible stuff. Let's talk about nuclear power stations. 6 million homes apparently are going to be powered by nuclear power. Anybody worried about that? I mean, I'm not. I think nuclear power is great.
Very clean, as long as it's not dangerous.
Bring it along.
Absolutely.
I'd rather have that than windmills, I think. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's right. And as long as it's safe. I mean, the people will talk about nuclear. They always talk about the explosions and things.
There aren't many, really. Are there?
No, exactly.
Yeah, but do you really want to have a nuclear power station down your road?
Well, I wouldn't move into a road that had one in it, probably, no.
Compared to a lovely, beautiful wind farm.
I'd prefer it to fly to.
A lovely, beautiful wind farm. Sorry. I think you've used the wrong adjective there. They're not lovely,
so
beautiful.
Graceful.
They're not at all graceful. They kill
hypnotic.
loads of birds, right? They make a terrible noise when they're on. And anybody who lives near them will tell you that they create a very odd kind of
You know that the bird thing is just simply that within a generation of birds that's going to change. But it's just that they don't
birds are going to learn to fly around them.
I mean,
how are they going to learn? Because the birds are going to tell them.
They're
all dead.
We should let 1,000 energy sources bloom, have nuclear, wind, whatever, as long as it keeps the light on. I think we're in desperate measures at the moment.
I'm just going to keep burning my wood in my wood burning.
I think that's good.
I like to see trees which are regenerative, which of course can be regrown.
Yeah.
Cut them down, they warm you up.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think that's fair.
It's very good. Now, listen, that's all from me tonight. You've been watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham here. Thank you to all my guests. I will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. I'm going to put this on because at the end of the day, there's only one way to end this show. Good night.